And ladies and gentlemen, we are live this lovely Monday evening, right around 9 p.m. Central Time here in the great state of Missouri. My name is Sean Phillips, and as always, I'm joined alongside my co-host, Mr. Andy Van Beber, and we are the Voice of Reason podcast. Andy, how are you doing tonight?
Doing great, brother. How are you doing?
I am good. No complaints. Today was a super busy day for me at work,
I hear
but
that.
other than that, I've got no complaints. How'd your Monday treat you?
Pretty good. I went out and I'm laying outdoor carpet on my deck, and I did that today. I'm counting down the hours till I can go back and
Hmm.
go to work. So I will be.
Yeah.
I'm off of quarantine on Wednesday. So last
Nice. Okay,
last
cool.
last day at home tomorrow. So I'm very excited about that. Well, my wife is not excited at the fact that I will be leaving her high and
With the
dry. Yeah,
kids. Yeah.
yeah. So it my cousin who we had on. You remember my cousin Josh? We had on
Yeah.
about a
Yeah.
dozen episodes ago, and he did give us a he listened to our Friday night episode. Which, by the way, thank you for all the input on that. We had a ton of post comments afterwards. I never experienced that one before, but we had a ton. And he actually messaged me. He said, "You want me to file a lawsuit?" And I'm like, "No." He said, "I'm bored," and I was like, "No, I don't need to make enemies up here, Josh. Thank you." So, but I'm glad that my cousin still listens to us and he still cares about his family, and I think that's awesome. So,
Yeah, no, that's great. And speaking of lawsuits, we'll have to take a deep dive next week. We might be looking at a Kyle Rittenhouse
yeah,
verdict here pretty soon. So
yeah,
maybe next Monday we can
dive into
jump into
that.
that and
I tell
talk a
you
little
what,
bit.
you want to talk about something that has no business being politicized? Is that guy's court case was. I've been following that along, and
I I I will save it for next week.
okay,
I
we'll leave it at that. We'll leave it at that.
Yeah, yeah. And then the other one that we definitely should also talk about too. Have you seen the news? Like, have you seen any of the footage from the Ahmaud Arbery case? Like
No,
the defense attorney for the morons that murdered this young man.
no. Is
So
it?
right now, the big thing that this guy keeps talking like going on about, mind you, this is like a small town. Like the courtroom is probably the size of my living room. It looks to be. But
Mm,
the defense attorney for so essentially, I don't know their names, but Ahmad Aubrey, for those that don't remember, was I think he was 24,
that's
25-year-old
that.
black man
Yeah, that sounds about right.
who was killed um, by three men who hunted him down after they said that he was breaking and entering on a vacant home. Um, Allegedly, he was out for a jog. They claimed that he was breaking into his home. They chased him down, ended up killing him. He was defenseless, didn't have a weapon, anything like that. It was vigilantism at its finest for a kid that was not even breaking the law. They
Right.
have no proof that he was breaking the law. Anywho, we'll get to that, the details behind it. But the defense attorney has now not just once, okay, did it even after the judge told him that it was ridiculous, but he was requesting that no more famous black pastors come into the courtroom
Come
while
on.
this case was happening.
Come
Yeah.
on.
I can't even make it up. I can't, and then
Come
he
on.
compared it. What did he compare it to?
Oh my gosh. You got to be kidding me.
Yeah, he also compared it, if I'm not mistaken, to something along the lines of like if it would be like bringing in a bunch of cops into a case where they were defending someone that had killed a cop. It's like that level of intimidation, and I was just like, what is this guy even going on about? And the judge, and then get this. So mind you,
Mm.
none of these people, like half the people in this courtroom, aren't wearing masks, including the defense attorney. And then I kid you not, he then goes, because Reverend Jesse Jackson had appeared, and he basically appeared after the fact that last week the guy said, like, no more famous black pastors. So then Jesse Jackson's like, now I'm going to show
Now
up.
I'm going to show up.
And he did. And then, mind you, this guy's not wearing a mask. And he even goes, now I want the record to show, I kid you not, he even says, I want the record to note that even though I don't believe in masks, I want the record to show that Reverend Jesse Jackson's mask is sitting below his nose for the record to show. And then the judge looks at him and is just like,
oh God,
what?
Yeah,
it
you've got to be kidding me. Oh man,
yeah, this Rittenhouse thing has got me. I've actually taken a deep dive into a case from a few years back that I'm sure you famously remember, the Casey Anthony case.
Yeah. Oh God, yes. Who could forget that?
And you want to talk about a botched prosecuting attorney? I mean, one of the worst attempts at getting what is a very clear-cut case, mean, clear-cut done to mess it up that bad. It's it's very funny when those kinds of cases make national news, and it's just makes you think twice about the.
And we'll get more into this next week, but the prosecution is pretty much hanging themselves in this Kyle Rittenhouse case too. I mean,
big time.
Everybody that they're bringing into the courtroom to testify against him turns into a witness for him. Mm-hmm. And from what I've been seeing, I watched just a tad bit of it today. I don't even know when they're going to be coming out with that. When are they expected to go to did they go to jury today, or are they?
They could have. I know they were getting ready for closing remarks, but I don't know if they haven't. Yeah. So I would say by next Monday we'll be looking at a verdict. I would say.
Yeah. So we'll talk. Well, I wanted to say that's what I was wanting to say. I was wanting to save that for next week because that case is definitely going nowhere. I was wanting to look at we called tonight, and by the way, episode 37. I was really that still blows my mind. But anyway, episode 37. We called it "Got a Dollar to Spare," and so the U.S. Department of Labor, or not labor, the U.S. I'll show you the graphic here for people who are. Sean's not going to be able to see this, but this is the inflation graph. U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics. I was close. Just released their report. The inflationary rate now is going up to 6.2% this last month. And that's the highest it has been in forever. We've seen a steady increase, 2.6, 4.2, 5, 5.4. So you see there on the graph for those of you who are watching live. This is very, and you put in with that also the bottleneck situations that's going on with our supply chain right now, and things are starting to get very interesting. And before people start jumping to conclusions, no, it's not all about minimum wage. I want to nip that one in the butt right now. A lot of what this is, and I read a few studies today that is talking about why what economists are saying is leading to this rise in prices. Number one reason, believe it or not, is the stimulus packages. The stimulus package, as has been said, has actually overstimulated the economy. So now the demand is way, way up. And anybody who has studied any kind of economics knows that when demand is high and supply is low, prices are going to go up. So these two things are going hand in hand right now with the supply shortage. And I'll actually show you some pictures here. So this is actually some images from Long Beach and Los Angeles. What you see here is these are your normal storage crates that, that goods come in through from China. And according to another graphic that I have here, it says, normally Normally, on average, 29,000 containers arrived each day in September. As of October, this was released in October, 18,000 containers are being unloaded a day compared to 29,000 in September. There are 540,000 containers sitting in Long Beach and in Los Angeles Harbor right now.
Do they know why they're just sitting there?
Well, so again, it comes to a lot of different things. It comes down to a shortage of workers. We've had a trucker shortage, and I talked about this with a buddy of mine who is a over the road trucker. We've had a trucker shortage now for going on forever. According to the Bureau, and that's something else from the Bureau of Labor Statistics, stated that there is a shortage of 80,000 truckers this year alone. 80,000 truckers. And that's not just Long Beach, that's nationwide. And so there you have, and you're down on the amount of dock workers that you have, and so what you have now is this flush of demand. Okay, so there's the demand for the product. Okay, orders put in. There you go. It's sitting there now. It's sitting in China, or it's sitting in the ports. China's shipped it. It's done its part. I was reading another report earlier that said China, a lot of retailers now are making deals with China to fly stuff in, just to fly it in. Now, that will really, shipping goods, the reason why goods are so cheap from China is because of shipping via container ship. And when Bryson's hometown is Shenzhen, China, which is one of the major. It used to be called. Oh gosh, I can't think of the name of it. Canton. It used to be called Canton, whatever you want to say in China, but it is their major shipping port. And when you're driving out, when you're leaving town and you're driving past the ports, I mean, it's just like as far as your eye can see, just all these shipping containers. This is what they do. All right. So now we have this bottleneck that has occurred, and now we have, because there's been such an increased demand for goods. I mean, it's good and it's bad. It's good in the fact that, yes, we stimulated the economy. We've got the economy moving. Things are going forward, but we're at a standstill because now we have this demand. And you also have to look at the fact that during COVID, what happened during COVID? Everybody laid off. Okay, so now you're short-handed. You do not have the workers to do what you need to do, especially in the docks. And and of course, the federal COVID unemployment benefit ended in September the 15th. And so we can't.
Yeah, and there's still other benefits that we're getting. Like I know we're receiving $300 a month still.
Yep, we are too. 500
for the kids. I mean, and I remember at the very beginning of this pandemic when the first stimulus check came out. It was like $1,400-$1,500, something like that.
The first one, what was it? It was the second or the third one that was really the cash cow. I can't remember.
I remember we had an employee at the restaurant that I was working at who got that stimulus, and they had kids, and so they got a little bit more, but they just up and quit their job.
Yeah.
The day they got like a week after they got their stimulus. And I tried talking some sense into them, like, hey, like, we don't know when the next one's coming. This is not money that we're going to get to keep. Like, this is money that will eventually hear. And that was a thing. I've kind of had that argument with a couple people, is it might not be something that, we're going to see us having to pay for within the next year.
Mm-mm.
But things can't be free forever, regardless of how people want to let you know. And there's and we can actually get into this because it does tie into a little bit of this inflation deal.
Sure.
But for those that don't have Twitter, if you do, I recommend you give Elon Musk a follow. So Elon, as we've known, is kind of like if a 20-year-old, you know, a 20-year-old computer nerd had $1 billion.
Right.
Essentially is kind of, and not just a billion, hundreds of billions at this rate.
Right.
But he is going he's not taking it to the house floor. He's not taking it behind people's backs. He is literally calling out politicians and industries on Twitter about some of the nonsense that they go on about. Bernie Sanders was the latest in his wall of, so Bernie was going on like some tweet. It was like a tweet of like, oh, we need to tax the rich more. And Elon, the first reply Elon had was like, I honestly forgot you were still alive. Yeah.
Yeah.
But then,
Yeah.
but then he came at him and said, "What?" He said, "Okay, what do you want? What do you want, Bernie? Do you want me to sell more stock to pay more taxes? Because I will." And then he's like, but then I want to see a detailed spreadsheet from you of where my tax dollars are going. He's even said, in these tweets recently, this past week, he said, I will pay more taxes gladly if you show me where it's going. It was rather amusing, but with inflation and with like people always seem to think, or some people are seeming to think that, yeah, if we just tax the rich, our problems will go away. And that's not the case. The people that always will pay the price, look at history. Look at history from the beginning of time when taxes were a thing. When there were kings ruling castles, who paid taxes? I think it was the monarchs? I think it was the rich? No. It was peasants. It was peasants who didn't have anything, were paying taxes and starving. Who do you think's paying taxes now? You think it's the super rich? No, because they're protected by their friends that they got into office.
Well, and something else. And so you said that. And so I'm looking here at I just went to the Tax Foundation. This is a nonprofit, nonpartisan organization that does your tax report for. So it said in 2018, 144.3 million taxpayers reported earning 11.6 trillion in adjusted gross income, and paid 1.5 trillion in individual income tax. Let's see, where was it at? I just saw it said in 2018 the top 50% of all taxpayers paid 97.1% of all individual income taxes. So while the bottom 50% paid 2.9%. And be that as it may, like you said, there are those people who are finding their ways around it.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, I want to be able to say, like, for example, this infrastructure bill that just got signed today. Infrastructure bill got $1.7 trillion.
Something insane. Yeah.
Okay. So and this was the crazy thing. Every site I visited, CNN, CNBC, Fox News, Fox Business, Bloomberg, everybody gave the same, whatever excuse or how we're going to pay for it. Oh, it'll pay for itself.
Mm-hmm.
It'll pay for itself because of so much money being invested into the infrastructure. And it will create jobs. It will create jobs. Mm-hmm. But still, in the end, I think they said in the long run, it's still going to add somewhere in the neighborhood of what they say, $600 billion to the national debt. So it's not paying for itself. And our economic mode of thinking has been the same since Roosevelt. I mean, the last time I believe that we had a balanced budget, I want to say was either McKinley or it wasn't Teddy. Teddy spent a lot on the Navy. So I think McKinley was our last balanced budget president right there at the turn of the century. And this whole mentality that we have now is it was before it was even theorized. It became theorized by a British economist, John Maynard Keynes. John Maynard Keynes stated that if you want to stimulate your economy, you need to spend money on the people. And once you spend money on the people, they will turn that money around and they will put it back into the economy. Now, the idea is, though, that at some point you need to siphon that off. You prime the pump, okay? Just like you prime when you're getting ready to mow your yard, you prime your gas. You prime your gas tank on your lawnmower, your carburetor, to get the gas into the. Once you get your lawnmower started, you're not still down there hitting the button priming it, okay? So we have been priming the pump vigorously for 80 years, 75, 80 years. And people shouldn't be surprised when you see stuff like says inflation is inflation is shooting up, and we need to tax, like you said, and Bernie's like, we need to tax the rich. Okay. And I agree with Elon. Show me where, give me a breakdown. Give me a breakdown of where my tax dollar. I totally agree with that, because if you really want to get depressed, go to usdebtclock.org. That is, you remember me showing that to you in government? That was.
Yep. And it's funny how much more advanced it is now of all the little different things that are on there. It's pathetic.
If you go to, usdebtclock.org, and it is a running tabulation of what our debt is. And you can actually do a time capsule. You can go back. I forgot how many years you can go back, but you can go forward. And what they will do is it'll that you want to really get depressed. It'll tell you what the debt's going to be in like 2025. And it's, I'm bringing it up right now. It just constantly is moving, and we could do a show just on government waste and spending and where some of the places where it's going, and it would totally, if people were to really sit down and look at like some of the programs, I remember the one that always stood out to me was and this has been 10, 15 years ago, but people, were studying, there was a group of scientists at the University of Wisconsin who were doing a study on global warming and the effect that methane gas was having on global warming. And so they got $1 million grant. And again, it's only $1 million, but $1 million grant to study the methane emission from cow poop to see, okay, that to me is that's ignorant. Why do you need that? Why do you need the government? So these are the ways that, so right now so according to the National Debt Clock, we're getting ready to cross the threshold into $29 trillion.
I remember back when I think I was in high school, it was somewhere around like 10 or 11 trillion.
Mm-hmm. Oh, when I first started teaching back in 1997, the national debt was $8 trillion. And we did this whole thing about how it was going to be this big deal when it crossed over the $10 trillion threshold. And
so what do you think? What do you think would be a way? What would be some things that would need to happen for that number to switch?
The biggest thing that I think needs to happen, and more states are doing this, and I don't know why we can't do this, the citizens need to push for a balanced budget amendment. Missouri was I remember because it was in the first election that I voted in 1992. We passed the balanced budget amendment, and Missouri was one of the, I don't know if it was one of the first states, but it was a state that became one that had a balanced budget.
Meaning that like the budget wouldn't go into a deficit.
Yeah, you had to account
Okay.
for. So, and here's what this amounts to on the state level. And I've talked to many. I talked to a lot of state representatives, and of course, going to board meetings, you hear about this long about May and June and the May and June board meetings, where the
Hmm.
state begins to make its projections as to what the income is going to be for the following year, and they're gonna look at stuff. I mean, obviously, they will look at uh, business corporate tax rate. They will look at new business coming in. They will look at all money from the federal government. They're going to look at all that, and then they will say, okay, we are projecting X amount of money coming in. So this is what we're going to give to you. Then we're going to give this to the schools. So by July, we kind of have an idea of what we're going to be getting for the following year. And I've remember years in past where we have said, okay, we're going to have. There was one year where they cut every school had to cut their transportation budget. I believe it was by $70,000. And for the
Jeez.
bigger schools, okay, that's a drop in the bucket. For a school like ours, that's and I remember when that happened, we combined routes.
I remember yeah, I remember when that happened.
I mean, we went from having heck 6 or 7 routes. I believe we're down to four or 4 or 5 routes. I've driven. I'm driven 2 of them. So yeah, I think there's 4 routes. I think we run 4 routes now.
So
And
4 buses total.
well, we still have our fleet. We still have our fleet of
Okay.
buses, but we will run 4 to 5 buses a day depending on what's going on.
Mm.
And it's not that hard. At least I wouldn't. Of course, here I am saying this from my local standpoint. You and I, this is how I look at it, Sean. You and I, if we say, okay, here's how much money I have coming in every month. I have X amount of dollars coming in every month. Okay, I know that I have to. What do we have to do first? We have to pay rent. We have to pay utilities. We have to buy groceries, and we have to pay for
Hmm.
automobiles. Okay, what we have left above and beyond that, then we can invest. We can, if we want to splurge on something, we can save, put money into savings. All right. To me, everybody is always coming with their hand out to the federal government saying we need funding for this project. And it's like when you apply for a grant. If you've ever been a part of a grant process, I've been a part of a grant process. When you write for a federal grant, and we wrote for this is my at my first teaching job. We wrote for was basically it was a fine arts grant, but we in
Hmm.
and I'm not gonna lie, we twisted it and turned it. We this was in 98. We were able to get a block grant of $10,000 to our school to start a television studio. And we were able to buy, at the time we bought a Power Mac. This was back when Mac was the big thing. We were able to buy Adobe Premiere, which is the top of the line
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
for the personal computer. And we were able, on top of all of that, then we were able to get we got this grant was able to pay for me and 2 other coworkers to go to a seminar in Savannah, Georgia for a week, paid for flight, paid for meals, and paid for hotel. And
Nice.
and but you had to. I mean, there's thousands upon millions of people who are writing grants. We just got a grant out at Clopton to build a new ag lab, which is awesome. But there's also
Mm.
some of these things where you see where there's at some point the government is going to have to say, okay, we've got to cut you off. I,
Hmm.
and nobody wants to do that because we believe that the government needs to do this, and this. But when you look back at 1790s, okay, 1790s, we were paying for our armed forces. We were paying a stipend. We weren't paying a salary. We were paying a stipend to our representatives. And but what I found really amazing, people don't really think about this, but back in 1789, George Washington made 25 grand a year as our first president.
Mm.
Okay, and that's in 1789 money. That's a lot more than what the
Yeah.
president's making today. But going back to what your original question was, we need to look at ways of how to balance the budget. The last president to balance the budget, of all people, Bill Clinton. Bill
Mm-hmm.
Clinton
Mm-hmm.
made it a point 2 years of his last 2 years of his term. He had ran when he ran for re-election. One of the things that, other than I did not have sexual relations with that woman on Wednesday, the other thing that he said
Mm.
was, "I we're going to balance the budget," and he got a lot of kickback about that. But he cut, and your guys probably remember one of the biggest things that he cut back on was defense spending, and
Mm.
that was got a huge blowback from the military. Um, and he cut a lot of these transportation, and but which is why part of the reason why our infrastructure is the way it is right now. So, to me, can it be done? Yes, of course, but we're in a time of where we still think that the government needs to be hands on in the economy. So, I there's talk of another stimulus package. I hope not. I hope that
Mm.
President Biden has some wise, what do you want to call it, advisors that are plugging into his ear and saying, "Hey, you may not want to do this."
And he's gonna respond with what?
I know.
What? What? Yeah. Yeah. See, and that's one of the frustrating things when you look at budgets and how things are spent and looking at some of where money goes and then taking a look around it it's also one of those things too where you look at conflicting views, right? So I think I speak for most when I say like, yeah, there should be, and this is just one example, by the way. I know that this isn't the be end and all of fixing things, but take a look at like the prison system. I would say most people agree that there needs to be prison reform, right?
Yes, yes.
But then it's like, okay, well then how? How when we want to dive into like what kind of prison reform are we talking about? That's where people disagree. And it's almost like maybe that's why things don't get done. Some might argue like me, my argument would be like, well, let's take some of these nonviolent criminal offenders and, like ones like, deciding, okay, well, where do our priorities need to lie? Do we decriminalize like certain drugs and then we can pull people that are nonviolent drug dealers potentially out of prisons, right? Save money that way. And then we're
Right.
not spending money putting people into the prison system. Well, then people are like, well, there's going to be more drugs on the streets. And then it's like, okay, and then again, then there comes that morality battle. Is like, look at nations where they have legalized drugs and they even give drugs to addicts, but then they also pay for therapy sessions. They pay for the drugs, they pay for the therapy. You want to know what those nations aren't paying for?
Yeah.
They're not paying for medical bills. They're not paying for the ambulances to come where there's someone OD'd. They're not paying to put people in prison. So they're saving money by doing these things. You look at, okay, well, look at the infrastructure that prison is like. Well, how can we cut costs without affecting the livelihood that these inmates are living? Because we should not want people to go to prison and then to come back to prison. But unfortunately, that seems to be kind of what happens. Like I was just reading an article the other day that was talking about some of those California wildfires,
Yeah.
and one of the biggest fighting forces against those wildfires were prisoners, the prisoner firefighter crews that were going
Yeah.
out there.
I had seen that. Yes, I've heard of that
And
before.
and they had passed some kind of legislator to kind of try to help some of these individuals become firemen when they get out of prison. But it's proving that it's not working. Like the restrictions that these departments have would completely mitigate what some of these offenders are in for. And so it's just that's one thing of many. And then you look at our budget and okay, well, cutting defense. Well, what does that mean? Where, if we cut defense, is that gonna, when
What
you
message
think
is
about
that
it, right?
sending to the rest of the world too?
That, and it's like, okay, well, if we cut the defense budget, you know, I would say most American taxpayers are like, well, we don't want soldiers to lose their salaries. We don't want soldiers
Right.
to lose their benefits. Oftentimes, many of these people are going to say, oh, well, we're talking about, what, we don't need to be developing nukes. We don't need to be developing weapons. We don't, and then it's like, okay, well, look at history. Do you really think they're going to stop doing those things?
Can I ask you something though?
Yeah.
I want to chase a little rabbit just here for a second. What is
Yeah.
the average salary of your private first class in the military? What would be?
So it all, I can actually pull up. I will pull up the Army pay scale real quick and can give you a rundown. And this is the basic pay charts for 2021. This is E1, and so this is all branches. This is Navy,
Okay.
Air Force, Marines,
All
Coast
right.
Guard. Okay. And I will just go like the bare minimum, okay, of like 2 years or less, but some of these it won't even count on. So I'll just go in. I'll go in at someone that's got 4 years of service in. Okay.
Okay.
A private E1 with 4 years of service in a month makes $1,785
In a month?
in a month. Now,
Wow.
there's a couple things to consider there. That is the base pay. That is the base salary that they're going to make. Okay. There's the big thing that would be included onto that paycheck for a lot of soldiers is what's called their basic housing allowance, but that is all determined off where you live. So you could be a private living in Hawaii and your BAH might be $2,000 a month.
Okay.
Versus you could be a private living in Fort Sill, Oklahoma, and your BAH could be $500 per month. Okay. I don't know what they exactly calculate the costing living off of, but I know, for example, when I was deployed, my home of record was like in the St. Louis area.
Mm-hmm.
It was my parents, but it kind of falls in that area. So my BAH was like $700 per month. But then I had someone in my unit who had family in San Francisco, and they claimed San Francisco as their home of record, and their BAH was $4,000 per month.
Oh, God.
So
there may need to be a little bit of reform in that matter
big
too.
time.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean it is. Yeah, it can be a little bit ridiculous. So, but I mean, as you rank up, you make more pay and all that, all that jazz.
So there, one of the things, and I had this other thing pulled up too. Of course, there's always good little lists that you can have for waste of tax dollars. So earmarks, if you don't know what an earmark is, this is like in this $1.7 trillion bill that was spent, or that was written and signed, you have earmarks. Okay, what an earmark is basically what we call pork spending. This is the fat of the bill. This is where a lot of we're going to especially earmark this money for this purpose. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
As of 2000, now this is a little bit older study, but as of 2018, $14.8 billion per year go just in congressional earmarks. Okay. So God knows, and I looked everywhere. Today, and I could not find any. And even on Fox or any I did just an open search. Okay, who has read this bill and is there pork in it? And the other thing about this, and no shocker here, a lot of people haven't read this bill. The PDF for this bill alone is over 1,000 pages.
Oh my God!
Okay.
Of course it is.
So who knows how many earmarks are in this? One of the other things that they talked about, and probably heard about this, the F-35 Joint Strike Fighters. This program is 7 years behind schedule and $173 billion over budget, making it the most expensive weapon system in history with an estimated lifetime maintenance cost of $1 trillion per plane.
Oh,
Okay. The
boy.
F-35s, okay, so in 2020, $2.7 billion to produce more F-35s and $842 million to update the aircraft they already are supposed to replace. Okay. You like this one too, Sean. This is special coffee mugs for the Air Force. For more military waste, you could say the last 2 years, the Air Force spent $325,000 on 391 fragile, self-reheating coffee mugs. After replacing each newly broken mug at an average cost of $836 per mug. One of these great studies that I told you about, studying beer cozies. All right, here you go. I don't know if Chewy's still on or not, but Chewy would appreciate this one. The federal government often allocates funds for artistic projects and research studies that hardly seem worth taxpayer troubles. For example, 2 students from the University of Washington received a $1.3 million grant to study how to keep foam cozies keep beer cool in hot weather. You know.
And how much of that do you think was done where $1 million of that went into their bank accounts, and the rest of the money they were just like, okay, let's just sit here and come up with a hypothesis of why this is keeping our drinks cold while it's hot out.
And our friends at the National Institute of Health, this is one that's well documented. Since 1996, Northeastern University researcher Richard Maloney has received more than $3 million in taxpayer funds from the National Institute of Health to make hamsters fight each other while on anabolic steroids and other aggression-fueling drugs. Fantastic.
I need to get his contact
information. Fantastic. There's, the U.S. Census Bureau. Here's one for you. 2019 Super Bowl, I guess it would have been. $2.5 million in taxpayer money on a 30-second ad space for enticing Americans to fill out their census forms. Right there, right at you. And there's a whole.
Well, it's like
there's a whole list.
Too.
There's a whole list of this. I mean, unused plane tickets. The Government Accounting Office, which I'm sure you're familiar with, found the Defense Department had wasted $100 million with 6 years of tickets for flights bought through the Pentagon accounts that employees did not end up using. So, I mean, this is the kind of thing that I'm talking about. When you talk about needing to really get, let's get our mind, let's look at what really needs to be cut. This is the kind of things. And, when I was growing up,
dumbed down.
Go ahead.
The dumbed down version of that is like when you buy like groceries and then you buy extra stuff that you're like, I'm going to find something to do with it. And then you put it in your fridge and then you forget about it.
And it's there forever.
That's our version of exactly what this is like getting, instead of buying like a pre-bagged salad mix, you buy the lettuce itself and then you look at the lettuce and you're like, that looks really plain. And then 2 weeks go by and you're like, oh crap, I bought lettuce.
Brown. Yeah.
And then it's just disgusting.
Well, and there's all the things. I remember one of the things that Bill Clinton bought out, and I still remember to this day, he was talking about government contractors having a $500 hammer. I remember him bringing that out in a press. I don't know why that stood out to me, but that's just one example of something that just popped right back in my head when he was talking about balancing the budget. I remember him making a big deal about a $500 hammer for, I don't know, some kind of government contractor. But, all that is a cover-up for something else. And when I
remember the JFK Museum during the when COVID, the stimulus. What is it, $30 million?
Mm-hmm. I forgot about that. You're right.
Yeah.
So, well, and here's another story from my, and this happened. I did it too. So for 2 years, I did during college. They do internships for the Corps of Engineers. I worked at Mark Twain Lake one year, and then I worked for the Corps at Lock and Dam 20 at Quincy. Like I think it's one. But anyway, when I was working for Mark Twain Lake, so my supervisor at the time, and he was just showing us the ropes, and he said, "I want to show you something." He said, "You're a history major, right?" And I said, "Yes, sir." And he said, "Take economics?" "Yes, sir." So he said, "Come with me." We hopped in the truck. We went over to a storage shed. And for those of you who are familiar with Mark Twain Lake, when you go out to Mark Twain Lake, right before you go out onto the road that goes over the dam there, you can look off to the right, and I forgot what campground it is, but there's a big storage shed back there. If you want to know what's in that storage shed, I'll tell you. Because he took me in there, and he said, "This is your tax dollar at work." And I said, like, all right. And was inside a Morton building that your typical Morton building's what, 15, 20 foot high, something like that. And so, in the center of the storage room was these piles of bags to the ceiling. I'm like, "What's in these bags?" He said, "Grass seed." And I said, why are there so many of them?" He said, "Because if we don't spend the money, we lose it. And something we always spend on every year is grass seed. And we have to keep it for X amount of years." And so you had grass seed at the bottom of the stack that had to have been, God knows, 5 to 10 years old, that is not going to be useful anymore. But it's like what you said. It's the lettuce in the fridge that you forgot that you had. And it's the same thing with, I mean, federal money that we get from, that schools get. We got to spend it. If we don't spend it, they don't give us as much next year. And
yeah,
there's always somebody who can find a place to waste money. So,
yeah. I mean, it's one of those things that's just like you see it. We see it every day. We see it from the outside looking in, and I'm sure that if they really dug and into looking to see where money was really being spent and how much of it was, I mean, how much of it was really thrown out the window. If they really did take a deep dive into looking to see where they could cut off a lot of the fluff.
There's a lot of places.
And then even did the same with spenders, like with money that people receive from the government, as far as like just, like I'm a firm believer in disability. I think disability is very important. However, I know some individuals who, and this is just for, on my own personal level. I'm sure everyone probably has their own stories, but I know some individuals who took full-blown advantage of, and not like, if you're gonna get it, but some people that really just did dirty by claiming disability when that was not the case, and then on top of that also worked a full-time job under the table. So I mean,
double dipping like that.
There's a lot of abuse. There's a lot of abuse like that. And and we, I remember, people always talking about back in high school, it was always like, well, we should drug test people that receive, welfare and stuff like that. And it's like, yeah, well, okay, but what if that person, has kids? Then who's it really going to affect? It's not going to affect the person. It's going to affect the kids. So then it's like, okay, well, how can we entice people? Like right now, that's where we're falling into now with unemployment rates. And I genuinely am curious though about what is the basis for stating like this is the unemployment level in America, because when I see the news reports or some stupid ass person has to post something that's like, well, actually unemployment is the lowest that it's been in America since and it's like, I How is it?
Let's clarify that unemployment as being reported, because some people after a
Mm.
while just like screw it, you know. Yeah,
Yeah, because that's the big thing where they look at the numbers and it's like, go outside, look outside at the businesses. Like, you can't tell me that people are no, and and I'll agree. Like, it there should be something done, but then how do we address it as a nation without losing, to put it in perspective, if you're a business owner, right? And the big thing I hear, and oh God, it irks me when I see is people say, well, if you can't pay employees a living wage, you don't deserve to own a business. Okay. Well, then take a lot of these like small towns that have mom and pop shops, um, that, boutiques, whatever it might be, where they have some part-time employees or full-time employees. But well, then it's like, okay, well, then if this boutique wanted to stay open, and people act like a lot of small business owners are just like millionaires or
rolling
going to
in the
become
cash,
millionaires,
right? Yeah.
when so many people are like, the fact that so many of them are like breaking even or barely skating by it, like if you owned a small boutique and you had two or three employees that you could afford, right? But then you had to pay full benefits. On top of that, you had to pay, if we're basing it off of, like, not poverty wages, and you'd have to pay them damn near $40,000, $50,000 a year. And then it's just like, okay, well, then people would walk into the store like, you mean to tell me this t-shirt's $75? What for? Well, if
To
I
cover
don't
to
sell it for
cover
that, I cannot, yeah, to cover my ass.
did
And
I don't know if anybody saw this or not. I posted this on Facebook earlier this week, and the what really this is the what I think is the future. And I've said this for years. And let me find this. So there is a company, and they've actually been advertising on Facebook. It is let's see. It was from the entrepreneur. It was this entrepreneur magazine. It says how to invest in robotic shifts that are about ready to take over the fast food game.
mm,
And it's showing this company, and Miso Robotics, Miso Robotics is developing, and they've got the video of it on. You have to look back on my Facebook feed, but this guy is he's already got a company value, California based company. He's got 350 million already, and they've got this, and it's showing this thing with the. I mean, it's just going over the fries and everything like this, and I mean, we can't continue to go in the way that we are going, because people, the harder that and yes, and we've said this, I think we've probably said this 1,000 times on this podcast in the 37 episodes that we've done this. Yes, does there need to be a minimum wage increase? Absolutely, because some people need to meet standard of living wages. But in doing so, you are going to cause a ripple effect that is going to cost people their jobs and automation. I mean, it happened in the automobile industry. Look at half of these plants that these guys work at. They're automated. You've got less guys working the machines. But now you're going to have fast. And I've told my students over and over and over again. I never thought I would see the day, but now I'm looking at it. And I saw this article this week from Entrepreneur Magazine that said Miso Robotics is working on has a prototype that they have in place that can load, lift, and do burgers, and can do fries. And
well, I mean, look at a lot of fast food joints now. What do they have now? They have the kiosks up front.
yeah,
Look at department stores. They've got self checkouts up front. I mean, and we'll use fast food, and even like Walmart, for example, right? Places that are understaffed, that have more people flocking to them currently. it's never like usually people are in line, and I get it. I get being frustrated when your stuff takes a long time. I completely understand. But like there's a difference, because some people can just be frustrated, right? They'll be frustrated, they'll be annoyed, but at the end of the day, they're getting their food, they're going to go on their way. They might complain, online, bitches, gripes, concerns, but they're not being rude. They're not yelling at the people. They're not doing anything like that. But there are people that do, and it is pretty common. So imagine you're not getting hardly paid anything. You're worked to the gills because there's only 4 of you on shift for over 200 customers an hour.
Right.
And all of a sudden, something slips up or it takes a minute, and then you got someone screaming at you, yelling you to go F yourself or do this, that, and the other. Who would want to work in that environment?
Nobody. And here's
it doesn't make sense. Nobody.
You know who has, and you'll know this as soon as who has the business model down for this right now already, and that's Aldi's. Aldi's has had the business model before the recession, before COVID. My student teacher, and I'll mention her by name, but Jimmy Burnham, she used to be a checkout clerk at Aldi's, and she would say, we would never have more than 5 people on shift, usually 4 people on shift. You had 2 checkers and you had 2 guys working the back. And everything comes in. That's why you don't see it. I mean, when they put that stuff out there on the shelf, they put it in the box, they cut the box open, there you go. They're not always out there fronting shelves. They're not out there. But these people work their butts off. When she 3 of her coworkers, I remember she saying, checkout people at Walmart are short-lived because they all get carpal tunnel, because they have to be able to do so many scans and typing in stuff. I mean, they don't want you to take, I think, she'd given me a stat one time that if you are standing in line for more than 6 minutes at Aldi's, you're standing in line too long. And to me, that's become...
it's never very long for me. The only time I've ever stood in line a long time at Aldi's, if there's like an error and a manager has to come up. Right. But I mean, that's going to happen,
But I mean, that's why they keep and that's how they keep their overhead low. They tell
you, go screw yourself. We're not paying for bags.
Yeah.
It helps the environment.
Yep.
And well, and that's the thing too, is like, it's kind of funny how I read this, because like Aldi's are super, so essentially in like Europe, pretty much Aldi's like just a regular normal grocery store.
There's two brands of Aldi's in Germany.
Yeah, they have like the same business model. They're like, it's weird to them when they see footage of like Walmart's or something, or like other grocery stores in America where people are standing up, like doing the checkout. They think it's the weirdest thing. They're like, why do they think people need to stand up to do that job? And it is, and you're right. They're completely right about it. But yeah, I love Aldi's. I've loved Aldi's for a long time. We've shot there for a very long time, and it doesn't bother me to just have bags in my trunk. Or if if I don't have the bags, just grabbing some boxes, helping them clear it out.
You go through there and But I mean, this is if people get, and I guess to kind of tie all this up together is, if people are going to complain and moan and groan about the prices, about inflation, about everything else, it's not going. First of all, it's not going to go away anytime soon. Everything that I read today said at least into the third quarter of 2022. So you're talking the last 4 months of 2022. We'll see this inflation continue to spike. So you're going to see a continued rise in prices because of, and it's not all, like I said, it's not all the minimum wage. It's basically, it's high demand, low supply. I mean, this bottleneck plays into it. The part of it is higher wages. I mean, and one other thing we should have, this is one of those times that I really miss Travis. But one of the things that's going to also have to happen is the Fed is going to have to raise the minimum, or raise the interest rates. Right now, people are borrowing, because prime is still below 3.5%, I believe, right? Somewhere in the neighborhood, 3.5%, something like that. And as long as the Fed keeps this is another thing, and we, I don't know. It's not anything that's going to go away soon, and this is something that we need to be prepared for.
Yeah, I agree 100%. And well, I'm sure we'll come back to this conversation down the road, and it'll just be a broken record. But one can hope that maybe at least the state will figure it out. But we definitely appreciate everyone for listening to us. Just and so many short days back to back. We had a great show Friday.
Yep. Thanks again for all the
conversation.
Yeah, thanks for all of the feedback on that. We had a ton of feedback, and we hit a record for the month of October that according to Facebook, we reached over 1,000 people in October.
Nice.
And that was really nice to see that little report pop up on our stat sheet today. So thank you again for everybody who is tuning in. I know we have a lot more people who listen later on than we do listen live, and we thank you guys all for listening to us.
Yeah, thank you guys for taking the time to give us a listen. And again, make sure you guys check us out for our podcast on Podbean, Spotify, Apple Podcast, YouTube, Facebook Live here, anywhere you guys get your podcast needs. Make sure you guys also check us out. Look us up, The Voice of Reason, on Twitter, Instagram as well, right here on Facebook. We are branching out in the socials, and give us time. We're slowly going to try to figure out a good schedule to make sure we're active on those, and kind of get the word out on them a bit more. So that'll take time. We're two busy individuals, but we will get that schedule down. So it was a great talk, and I can't wait to dig into that Rittenhouse trial with you next week for sure. So, well, for our listeners, thanks again. V, is there anything you want to throw at them before we go?
No, just keep on listening, and I'll do this real quick. Anybody right now, we've been sponsored by American Tradition Coffee and by Van Beber and Son DJ services. The service that we use to restream does cost us $19 a month, but it's, we like getting our name out there. You can get in, contact Sean or I. If you want us to mention your business on the air or anything like that, please contact us. We can get you in as little as $10 a month. Anything like that you're interested, you want to have mentioned, we can always use it to boost our Facebook, everything else like that. So if you are interested in advertising with us, we can make a little logo and put it down there in the bottom corner of the screen down there, and we'd love to have you along for the ride.
Absolutely. Well, from the bottom of our hearts, thanks again for giving us a listen, and we can't wait to talk to you guys next week.
We'll see you.